Good evening. My name is Allison Kaplan. I'm Director of Education at the National First Ladies Library at the National First Ladies Historic Site in Canton, Ohio. We are so glad to have you all here tonight. I've been so excited for this program for a while. I want to remind everyone that we are on Facebook Live right now. We are also recording this program and it will be posted to the National First Ladies Library YouTube page tomorrow. I know that there may be some problems accessing this via Zoom right now. So once Sarah gets started, I'll be troubleshooting, but I want to remind people as I tell you about the programs that almost all of our programs are accessible via our YouTube. So you might have seen one of our most recent curator series that was in the fold there on the presentation. You can watch that anytime you would like via National First Ladies Library. So I wanted to mention a few programs before I introduce Sarah. We have some really cool stuff going on at National First Ladies Library. And if you are local to us in Canton and you get a chance to go to the National First Ladies Historic Site, we have a few exhibitions that are getting ready to close and some new exciting stuff opening in the summer. So if you haven't been able to see our First Ladies on the Campaign Trail exhibition, please head over. Our Education Center is open to the public with our partners, National Park Service, and it's a great exhibition, really fun to check out. And we have some really cool stuff coming up on view soon. We also have, as you are winding down the school year, if you're looking for some STEAMy things or STEM things to do with your students, if you have a child or grandchild at home, we have our last installment for the school year of Ladies in the Laboratory, inspired by African American woman ophthalmologist Patricia Bath. Lots of really cool, fun op art stuff. Oh, and there's one more coming up. So we're really excited about that. And we will be extracting DNA from strawberries soon too. So if you love cooking and you love science, stay tuned. We also have a virtual book club coming up later next month. We're going to be reading White Houses. It's a fictional book about Eleanor Roosevelt. It should be a really fun discussion. There's lots of time to read that book. It's an easy read that you can breeze through. We do a film discussion as well, and we do that in cooperation with our local Stark Library branch. We are screening May 11th, She's Beautiful When She's Angry. You can access that online through Stark's Library's Hoopla system if you sign up via Eventbrite for the program, and then you can join us on May 11th. We usually have a special expert speaker, and we have a women's studies professor from the University of Akron. It should be really great. And then last but not least, the Smithsonian is just reopening to the public, and the National Portrait Gallery at the Smithsonian has a really amazing exhibition of portraits of First Ladies. And we were very lucky enough to loan 3 works to the exhibition. So in honor of that, we will be hosting the curator of the exhibition, Gwendolyn Dubois Shaw, May 5th for our Legacy Lecture Series. You can register for any of these events on our Eventbrite page, which you can access via Facebook or our website. And last but not least, if you are a teacher, a volunteer docent educator, you might be interested in a program we are co-hosting with the Smithsonian, a teacher talk related to First Lady portraiture. So that should be really fun as well. That's on May 20th. So that's sort of what is coming up as we move into the spring. And I am super excited to introduce our speaker tonight. If you're not familiar with Sarah Morgan, she is armed with a bachelor's degree in history and a passion for First Ladies, which has led her on this amazing Instagram career path as a First Lady cookbook fanatic. And she found a First Lady cookbook First Lady's Cookbook Favorite Recipes of All the Presidents of the United States at a thrift store back in 2019. She began her project on Instagram, Cooking with the First Ladies, with the goal to cook her way through all of the administrations. Now she also creates content for National First Ladies Library, filming videos to share First Lady food facts, tutorials, and recipes. And we're really excited to have her here live to present Rosalind Carter to us tonight. So if you have a peanut allergy, you probably are going to be a little disappointed, but otherwise it should be really fabulous. We will be sending out the recipes that she shares with you tonight tomorrow morning. So you'll get a link to the YouTube as well as the recipes. I know that some of you may have gotten them already, and we're making a few updates. So if you have questions for Sarah, leave them in the chat and we will get to them at the close of the program. And I am going to hand things over to her. Thank you so much.
All right, well, hey y'all, Sarah Morgan here, and tonight we're going to be talking about Rosalind Carter. So welcome to Cooking with the First Ladies live program for, of course, the National First Ladies Library. And since we're going to be focusing on the Rockin 70s tonight, I'm feeling a little stoked and a little freaky deaky because this First Lady is still alive, of course. Now, recently there was this amazing documentary on CNN, which actually my mama was the one that told me about, Jimmy Carter, Rock and Roll President. And that actually really inspired me to want to focus on Rosalyn and the Carter administration for this program. So in addition to the documentary, the National First Ladies Library biography, current news articles, and her autobiography, First Lady from the Plains, is where I did most of my research. So there really has been really hardly any other First Lady as impactful as Rosalind. So stay tuned to learn how to cook Rosalind's Plains Georgia cheese ring, the Carter family's cornbread. So there are two peanut unrelated recipes here, and also peanut butter pie. And following, like Allison was saying, I'll leave some time for some questions in the chat. But let's hope tonight will be far out of sight. But first, we're going to start this groovy evening with a cocktail. So when people realized Jimmy Carter's campaign was more than just peanuts, they started to become popular in many different forms. One such way was a cocktail appearing in the recipe section of the book Miss Lillian and Friends. The Jimmy Carter cocktail was developed by a restaurant owner in Wisconsin as a nod to his peanut farming days in Plains, Georgia, where peanut farming is a major agricultural industry. So the cocktail that we're going to make is a little bit of a variation on the original, using vodka instead of bourbon as well as milk. But when you do get your recipe cards in your email, you'll also be able to see the original recipe as well. So just to get things started off with our cocktail, we are going to take 1/4 part creamy peanut butter. Also, I don't have a shaker. I realized that after the fact, so we'll hope this mix up well. And then you're going to take 1 part cream de cacao liqueur. And you're going to take 1/2 part vodka of your choice. And then you're going to finish that off with 1/4 part of milk. And then I'm going to step over here. We're going to grab just a little bit of ice after we stir this up. But again, if you have a shaker, this is probably going to be a lot easier with the peanut butter. So let's get this all stirred up. A little bit of ice. And in your cocktail glass, or whatever you would prefer, you're just going to put your creamy peanut butter cocktail. in your glass. And you can garnish that with a Reese cup if you're so inclined. So cheers, y'all. And I hope y'all enjoy the program tonight. Right now I'm going to step over to my computer. I'm going to share a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation and a little bit about Rosalynn Carter and the Rockin 70s. And then we'll get back to cooking. So enjoy. Rosalind Carter became First Lady in 1977 at a time when so much was going on, especially with technology and music, including the introduction of Apple and the release of the Apple II computer, the Atari gaming system, and the emergence of punk rock. Gas was only actually around 60 cents a gallon. The Carter administration followed the Watergate scandal, which made many have a more negative view on politics, and also during a time when the Vietnam War was still a major issue, which Jimmy Carter actually addressed by pardoning the draft dodgers. The energy crisis and civil rights problems were also looming. Even so, the 70s had a focus on pop culture, and people were listening to music ranging from ABBA and boogieing down to disco tunes to poppy songs from Olivia Newton-John and the rock of the Rolling Stones on 8-track tapes. They were also watching an equally broad range of films such as Saturday Night Fever, Grease, Star Wars, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The decade saw people young and old experimenting with marijuana, drugs, and the freedom to do what they wanted to do. Guys as well as girls were growing their hair long, and the dudes were wearing platform shoes, leisure suits, and out-of-sight mustaches. Girls rocked their peasant tops, bell-bottoms, and not only long hair, but a style they called the shag. Military surplus clothes were groovy, and pet rocks were funky. The Carter administration was definitely a rockin' one. In fact, they were more involved with music as no other presidential candidate had been before, and it reached an amazing amount of people, making it so impactful, which has now paved the way for Oval Office visits of Cyndi Lauper and Lin-Manuel Miranda, alongside the cast of his outstanding rap musical Hamilton. Rock and roll played a significant role in Jimmy Carter's election, and for the first time, Rolling Stone magazine became political. The publication even said that he made it the party people's party because the campaign reached out to a younger generation and for the first time felt like they were in charge. Although many did not like his association with Bob Dylan, Willie Nelson, and others, the strategy worked. In the CNN documentary, Bob Dylan uses the Leonard Skinner lyrics describing his friend as, quote, a simple kind of man. When Dylan visited the Carters at the governor's mansion, Jimmy quoted his lyrics back to him, and his music, in fact, was actually played frequently in the house. Jimmy also said, quote, we have an America, in Bob Dylan's words, busy being born, not busy dying. In fact, mere days before the election, Dylan played Georgia on My Mind on SNL as a salute to the candidate. The Allman Brothers probably played the largest part as they played concerts and helped raise money for his campaign. Greg Allman has been quoted saying, we helped get him elected. Letters were sent to members of the band, such as Dickie Betts, that said such things as, my campaign is going great thanks to great friends like you. The Allmans first met the Carters at the governor's mansion, which was described as the hippest governor's mansion ever by Robbie Robertson. And Jimmy greeted them barefoot and in jeans. According to Rolling Stone, the splashiest Carter benefit was a Florida stadium show that featured not only the Allmans, but also former Delaney and Bonnie frontperson Bonnie Bramlett, who was actually known as the only Allman sister. That campaign netted around $280,000, which would be over $1 million today. He leveraged rock in no ways that anyone had ever done before. The Carters brought a stereo with them when they moved into the People's House, and were very excited when they arrived and discovered the thousands of discs donated by the Recording Industry Association of America. The Carters oversaw the upgrades to the White House Record Library, which had begun with the Nixon's collection of LPs. In 1979, with the help of the Record Label Association, the collection became one of the most lasting contributions to the rock infusion at the White House. Although rock music catapulted him to the presidency, his secretary actually most often played classical tunes on the speakers installed in his office. Jimmy also liked to listen to music on full blast, but Rosalind preferred it a little bit quieter. The Carters also enjoyed watching movies, and in addition to frequently escaping to Camp David, they spent a lot of time in the White House movie theater. They would order several films each week, and although Jimmy would pretty much watch anything, Rosalind was a bit more picky in the screenings she would attend. Wonder if they were tuning into comedies like National Lampoon's Animal House, horror flicks like Carrie, or maybe even a documentary like Grey Garden. I mean, if it were me, I'd for sure be watching Dolly Parton in 9 to 5. Eleanor Rosalind Smith Carter was born in Plains, Georgia on August 18, 1927, and was the oldest of 4 children. She always went by her second name instead of her first. Now, some have claimed she was named after Eleanor Roosevelt. That actually wasn't the case, as she was named for her mother's mother, Rosa. As a young girl, she loved reading and enjoyed paper dolls, according to her autobiography. Her mother, Allie Smith, known as Miss Allie, became responsible for not only her children after the death of her husband, who died when Rosalind was only 13, but also her elderly father after her mother's passing. She took on multiple jobs in order to support them, including working in a grocery store, school cafeteria, and the local post office. Rosalind recalls in her book, First Lady of the Plains, she helped her mother sewing for others, including assisting in making an entire trousseau for a local bride, and remembers her mother sold milk and butter from the one cow they had. Rosalind also made extra money for the family by working part-time as a shampooer at the local beauty salon. She directly credits her excellent work ethics to her mother, and she is known as a skillful and hardworking woman who is actually still working at a flower shop when the Carters started their term in the White House. Rosalind also says she was raised to be an independent woman. She also recalls how her mother was in her teens when the 19th Amendment was passed, giving women the right to vote. And she said she learned to understand how important that right is to have the ability to help decide on issues that affect the country. Ironically, Rosalind was born on the 7th anniversary of a historic ratification. Rosalind eventually graduated as salutatorian of Plains High School. Soon after, she attended Georgia Southwestern College, but later dropped out because of financial issues and obligations to her family back home. She fell in love with Jimmy's picture, and as she described it, it was a fantasy romance. She wanted him to fall in love with her, but was so nervous when they actually met once he got home. She had stayed in touch with his sister Ruth, who she was friends with, and believed him to be the most handsome man she had ever met. Eventually, after much seeming conspiring between her and Ruth, they finally met, even though she was so nervous because she didn't know what the real Jimmy would be like. He wouldn't just be the man in the photograph. She recalls they were at a movie on a date on December 7, 1941, when the screens went blank and the announcement was made the United States was entering World War II after the devastating events at Pearl Harbor. During their time apart, he once gifted her a silver compact engraved with ILYTG, which stood for I love you the goodest, at Christmas, which then he proposed slightly afterwards, to which she declined, thinking it was a bit too fast. However, as we know, she accepted very soon after and are still one of the most endearing couples to have lived in the White House. They finally married at the age of 18 in July 1946. For the first 7 years of their marriage, they lived in 6 different states during his time in the Navy. During her time spent as a Navy wife, she not only basically memorized the Navy Wife Handbook, but also sewed Argyle socks and baby clothes, learned to crochet, flipped recipes as well as household tips, and listened to the popular soap opera Ma Perkins on the radio, basically living, as she recalls, the life of a typical 1940s Navy wife. She was extremely content, especially in Hawaii, where Jimmy learned to play the ukulele and where their second son, known as Chip, was born. Now, something about Chip. Rosalind remembers when Chip was older, how when JFK was shot, he was so upset that he actually threw a chair when the teacher had a disrespectful comment about how his assassination was, quote, good. Although the Carters didn't think throwing a chair was the right thing for their son to do, they didn't condemn him for it. The Carter family had always owned a peanut farm in their hometown in Georgia. And in 1953, when Jimmy's father passed away, they returned in order to take over the family peanut business. Even so, she liked the adventure of the Navy life and wasn't eager to return to planes, but Jimmy was. Although she described feeling miserable and projecting it onto others around her, she did eventually adjust by making friends. Rosalind handled the accounts and took over control of the business when Jimmy was elected to the Senate. They had 4 children, Amy, Jack, James, and Donnell. By the time he was elected, the 3 boys were all grown up, but during their time in the White House, Amy was their youngest child. She lived there throughout her parents' residency and, in fact, had a treehouse built for her on the lawn, where during the summer she would have sleepovers with her friends under the watchful eye of the Secret Service. Amy eventually went on to illustrate a book, The Little Baby Snooglefleeker, which was written by her father years before she was born, in addition to several other achievements. Most people, including Rosalind, were pretty surprised when the run for the presidency was announced by Jimmy. The campaign kicked off in 1975, and the headquarters were in the old train depot in Plains. Rosalind was very involved in Jimmy's presidential campaign and was actually so exhausted she did not want to wash her hair at night. So she actually wore a wig, which her mother even recalled at the time didn't know she was wearing one. Win with a grin, heal the nation with peanut oil, let's Carterize the country were a few posters held by people in the crowds during the campaign. However, one of the negatives during the campaign were also those who would claim anybody but Carter. She campaigned separate from Jimmy, and one of the main things she said that she learned traveling across the country was that although people live in different regions, have different lives and jobs, all people are the same and have the same worries and desires. She had even previously said, quote, "It was the governor's mansion that I realized that people are just people, no matter who they are or how famous or powerful or influential. They have simply had more experience or more opportunities or a special talent, and I was not as intimidated by them as I once thought I would be." Election night was particularly tense due to the back and forth of the polls. But after getting the news that they had won, Jimmy made a speech in front of the campaign depot in Plains, and Rosalind recalls tears rolling down her cheeks because she had never been so proud of him. She was actually the first candidate's wife to make a campaign promise of her own, which was that she would launch legislation reform for the mentally ill and would often refer to involve herself in what she called matters of substance. She also traveled the country for a couple of years prior in order to boost his image and help secure the nomination. Jimmy Carter said that he came to Washington determined to change the way government worked. His informal public image helped him in that task. After promising in his inaugural address to return government to the people, the president and first lady walked hand in hand down Pennsylvania Avenue from the Capitol to the White House, rather than riding a limousine, a tradition not seen since Thomas Jefferson back in 1801. Although the inauguration experience was exhausting, she ultimately remembers it as, quote, euphoric. Rosalind was the 39th First Lady from 1977 to 1981 and used her simple Southern kindness, grace, and values, as well as a willingness to laugh at herself to charm not only the American public, but also DC politicians. She became known as the Steel Magnolia and ultimately kind of resented the nickname and was described as having her own brand of smiling reassurance. Rosalind once said, quote, "You can make a first lady's job whatever you want it to be." And she really made the most of it because she became one of the most impactful. She was the most active and influential first lady since Eleanor Roosevelt and was so much more than just a wife because of her close working relationship with her husband. Jimmy claimed she is, quote, a perfect extension of myself and a very equal partner. She was so up to date on what was going on that Jimmy often said when he would come home, she could only listen to a few words about a problem and then be able to discuss it with him without having to explain it to him for hours. She would then follow the conversation by saying, quote, well, what are you going to do about it? So some have actually said this has made her the most powerful unelected official in the country at that time. She attended and observed cabinet meetings, which raised some eyebrows, as well as lobbied before Congress, assisted in writing his speeches, and helped plot political strategy. In fact, during one such cabinet meeting, while taking notes, she slipped into the vice president's chair during his absence. Rosalyn said, quote, the president of the United States cares what I think, and I find myself in the eye of history. I have influence, and I know it. Once a week, they had working luncheons between the two, where the freewheeling agenda would include discussing the status of the White House staff, campaign plans, lobbying efforts, all the way to the latest status of China, Iran, the Middle East, as well as domestic policies. She actually used a folder that was given to her husband in France that was engraved with Monsieur le Président Jimmy Carter on it, and was where she kept anything she needed to talk to him about during these lunches. Jimmy had overwhelming respect for her political instincts and her superb judgment. She was very candid publicly that Jimmy consulted her on political affairs and that he asked for her advice on various issues. She was the first Lady to take an office in the East Wing, which was normally used by the First Lady's staff. During her time in the White House, the federal government officially recognized the role of First Lady as a federal position. She was also very involved in his second campaign as he was dealing with the Iranian hostage crisis, which in her book, she actually refers to Iran as the four letters that have become a curse to her, but also the beginning of the end. Jimmy's principal footprint will remain achievements like the Camp David Accords between Egypt and Israel, the championing of human rights, as well as solar power. Once they had moved into the White House, Jimmy's favorite room became the treaty room, which had mostly furnishings that had been added by Ulysses S. Grant, and the table that Grant signed the treaty ending the Spanish-American War, which was then eventually used to sign the historic treaty between Egypt and Israel. During her time as First Lady, Rosalind visited Jamaica, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, Colombia, and Venezuela as the president's personal representative, which included meetings involving everything from human trafficking to beef exports. She also greeted Pope John Paul II as the first American representative when he made the list in 1979. In that same year, Rosalyn also raised millions of dollars for the Cambodian refugee crisis and traveled there to see the situation for herself. She ultimately convinced the United Nations to create a world relief coordinator and got Jimmy to increase quotas for refugees, accelerate Peace Corps efforts, and allow food delivery to the area. However, she has stated her greatest disappointment was not being able to push through the passing of the Equal Rights Amendment. The Equal Rights Amendment was a huge issue in the 70s. Prior First Lady Betty Ford and Rosalind ushered in a new era of how the public viewed the role through advocating for the ERA. But because it was seen as a mostly social role as First Lady at the time, they faced a lot of backlash. At one point, back when she was still First Lady of the state of Georgia, Jimmy once said at a press conference that he was for the ERA, but that Rosalind wasn't. She was a little upset, so the next day she went to the Capitol building to meet him for lunch and made sure to wear her large "I'm for the ERA" pin. The ERA became a larger issue in 1978 when Phyllis Schlafly, who was a conservative political advocate, especially against women's rights and the ERA, targeted both Carters. Rosalind responded by not only denouncing radicals, but by also reassuring housewives this was in their best interest and attempted to turn the focus to poverty, unemployment, healthcare, and education, all to do with women. She had a little bit more to do with Betty Ford as well, such as arts and culture, which included a few SNL skits. featuring Gilda Radner as Barbara Walters in 1976, and on others, Dan Aykroyd actually played Jimmy Carter. So now we're just going to watch a very short clip, courtesy of NBC, from 1976. Good evening. I'm Barbara Lola, and welcome to National First Lady Celebration. You know, many people don't realize that we're the elected president, and we're a first lady too. So tonight, I want to acquaint the American people with the candidates for that position. This is Betty Ford, and this is Rosalyn Carter. Hello, ladies. Now, however, although Betty and Rosalind seemingly got along, Betty judged her just a little bit at waving at everyone. Betty also canceled their appointment to meet to show her around the family living quarters, noting she wasn't feeling well. But Gerald Ford insisted Rosalind come anyway because it would look bad to the press if they didn't have the meeting. So they briefly met, and Rosalind recalled that Betty was very cordial. She was extremely successful in her work advocating for mental illness, which included the passing of the Mental Health Systems Act of 1980, and is actually a cause that she continues to advocate for today. Her goal was to take away the stigma of mental illness and create awareness that many deal with emotional and mental health in some way, whether it be themselves or a family member, especially in order to help those suffering to feel comfortable enough to seek or help treatment. As a young girl, she was introduced to people with developmental issues and was able to make this a priority even as First Lady of the state of Georgia. During this time, she also served on the Georgia Special Olympics chair and volunteered at an Atlanta hospital, which all gave her the professional background to propose federal mental health reform legislation. She was also very involved with projects aiding senior citizens and caregiving, which included lobbying for the Age Discrimination Act. Rosalind was always very disappointed that the press would rather talk about her fashion and what she served at parties instead of her favorite causes. In fact, she chose to wear the same gold embroidered sleeveless coat over the blue chiffon gown she had worn in 1971 for Jimmy's inauguration as governor of the Peach State to his presidential inaugural ball, which caused a little bit of controversy. Although she was stylish, many felt there should be more glamour in the White House. She wasn't very interested or concerned with that sort of thing, but she was very concerned about her physical condition, tried to exercise daily, which sometimes included jogging with Jimmy. She was extremely down to earth because she decided to use the staff offices again in the East Wing, mostly so that she didn't have to dress up or put on makeup all the time. In addition to their political work, both Carters placed national attention on the performing arts. They frequently attended the Kennedy Center for Performing Arts, especially attending musical productions. So much, in fact, Jimmy has claimed they attended more than any other First family, and Rosalind would often go to lectures there as well. They took as many opportunities to learn as they could, including signing up for art programs, taking Spanish lessons, which included reading the Bible in Spanish before bed, and she actually utilized her Spanish speaking skills during her trips to South America. And another little thing they did, uniquely enough to learn, speed reading. Rosalind also took violin lessons with Amy when she was 11. However, their duets have yet to receive any rave reviews from the White House staff who have been subjected to the performances. She also sponsored the very first jazz festival, the first poetry festival as well at the White House, and a whole series of classical music concerts. And during the winter holidays, held a gathering on the lawn for congressional families that even included a skating rink. They also continued to host musicians. In 1977, the Carters hosted June Carter Cash and Johnny Cash, as well as their son John, to a reception held for participants of HIRE, which stood for Health Through Industrial Retraining and Employment. State dinners, especially, were always considered to be, as she said, the most glittering events. And it seems they may have had the most far-out parties and guests during their time at the White House. Unlike many former presidents and first ladies, the Carters were never interested in fame when they left the White House. Wanting more of a simple life, they returned to their hometown in Georgia. They both continued working for social justice and human rights. As a former First Lady, she formed the Carter Center along with her husband in 1982 in Atlanta, where she has been a leading advocate, again, for mental health, but as well as early childhood immunization, human rights, and issues affecting women and children for decades. She also formed Project Interconnection, a nonprofit providing housing for mentally ill homeless people. In 1988, she and a few other former First Ladies held a conference called Women and the Constitution, which focused on the impact the document has on women. She has written actually 5 books, which not only include her autobiography, but also books written alongside her husband and co-author on caregiving and helping those with mental illness, as well as those promoting human rights. She also served on the board for the Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregiving, established in her honor and her alma mater. In addition, Rosalind was also dedicated to women and children's issues. In 1991, she launched Every Child by Two, which publicized the need, again, for early childhood immunization. She also had a passion to bring awareness to the declining monarch butterflies. And in 2013, the Rosalind Carter Butterfly Trail was established to continue advocating for the conservation of butterflies and their habitat, as well as helping schools form butterfly gardens. She continues to advocate for all of these things, even still to this day, and recently has teamed up with former First Lady Michelle Obama on issues regarding PTSD with American soldiers returning from Afghanistan and Iraq. She's been given a lot of awards over the years and was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame in 2001. She was also named Volunteer of the Decade from the National Mental Health Association and was very notably given, alongside her husband, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Today, Rosalind Carter continues her volunteer work, especially with Habitat for Humanity. In 1984, they started the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter Work Project, a yearly week-long project that has taken place in different areas all over the globe. Even as recently as 2019, they were seen working with their tool belts on at Habitat sites. One of most recently was right here in Nashville. Rosalyn and Jimmy just recently celebrated their 74th wedding anniversary, making them the longest married presidential couple, and they will celebrate their 75th in July of this year. They have 4 children, 12 grandchildren, and 14 great-grandchildren. Jimmy Carter has once said, "Rosalind is probably the most influential person in my life." In addition to her family and volunteer work, she has previously enjoyed fly fishing, bird watching, swimming, and biking in her free time. Actually, in May of 2010, she traveled throughout the country, throughout the US, to carry the message of her work, as well as books, which included an appearance as a guest on The Daily Show. The Carters are also very involved in their Baptist church, to which they have recently been able to return to services. Jimmy, as well as Rosalind, used to teach Sunday school classes, and that actually drew Democratic presidential candidates and visitors from across the country for decades. One of the slight scandals during this administration was the Carter sons smoking marijuana in the White House with Willie Nelson, which Jimmy has recently confirmed. The Carters actually continue their friendship with several musicians, but also Willie. So now I just want to play a short clip of the Carters singing Amazing Grace with Willie back in 2016. Rosalind has said, I believe that one of the most important things to learn in life is that you can make a difference in your community, no matter what or who you are or where you live. And kindness is the connection that links us all together and strengthens the bonds within our communities, neighborhoods, and families. So right before we get started cooking, the Carter's cuisine is usually described as simple, down-home Southern style. They also weren't picky eaters. Rosalind would often take time to talk with the White House kitchen staff about some of their favorite family meals so they could cook them to their liking. One of their favorite recipes was known as red and white, as they called it, which was red beans and rice. Jimmy actually taught Rosalind how to cook this recipe when they first married, and actually they would often cook meals together. They were both kind of enthusiastic cooks and kind of found it relaxing. However, when they were first married, she said she could only cook breakfast, chocolate fudge, brownies, but also remembers, quote, shelling peas and snapping beans and cleaning up after meals, but that her mother had basically done all the cooking. Now, peanuts ultimately became a symbol of the Carter family, as Mr. Peanut was a campaign mascot, as well as a group of Georgians who traveled around advocating for the Carters, known as the Peanut Brigade. But actually, as a Carter family, they really didn't eat any more peanuts than any others. Dizzy Gillespie, though, did once invite Jimmy to come up and sing the song Salted Peanuts when they hosted a jazz festival on the White House lawn. Even though we'll be making a recipe for peanut butter pie this evening, they were also known for their grits. Grits, which they were referred to as the grits factor, were served for their first breakfast at the White House and was seen as a symbol of their Southern style of living. Most recently, they were pictured kissing on New Year's Eve during their hometown's annual peanut drop, which was a cardboard cutout of a peanut, this year decorated with blue lights in honor of the state going blue this year. So we better keep on stepping. So let's get cooking. Okay, so I hope y'all enjoy. So what we're gonna make first is their cornbread recipe. I kind of put together a lot of this. But again, this is one that doesn't have peanuts in it. So what you're gonna do is you're going to take 1 cup of flour, half a cup of white cornmeal, half a cup of yellow cornmeal, 4 teaspoons baking powder, half a teaspoon of salt, and a tablespoon of sugar. Put that all together. Then in a separate bowl, we're gonna take 1 stick of butter that's been melted. Let's see, 1 cup of milk, and 1 egg. And we're gonna whisk that up together. And then basically it's just mix these two together and put them in your pan. And then we're gonna bake it for about 20 minutes on 425, which we won't have time to see the finished product of this one, but I will show you my finished cornbread from yesterday. So see, very simple cornbread recipe, which again, really went nicely with their red beans and rice that they liked. So once you get that all mixed up and get it in your pan, you won't do that, but then you'll bake that on 425 and you'll get a beautiful plate of Rosalind Carter's cornbread. So also for our next recipe is peanut butter pie. So for the peanut butter pie, first what you're going to do is you're going to take 1 cup of powdered sugar, and then you're going to take 1.5 cups of peanut butter. And then we're just going to mix this up a little bit, and then we're going to set this aside. And I'm going to step over to the stove for our next step for this one. And we'll have to kind of let that get a little heated up just a little bit first. But over here in our saucepan, we're going to have 1.5 cups of regular sugar, 1/4 cup of cornstarch. We're going to add in 2.5 cups of milk, and also 3 egg yolks. So if you're going to make this one with your egg yolks, you're going to want to put your whites in your mixing bowl so we can make our meringue for the top of the pie. All right, so we'll get this a little heated up. And it doesn't take long, and you don't want to overcook it. So we'll just get that started. With your powdered sugar and your peanut butter, we're just going to kind of mix that all up together. And we'll just set that aside with our other ingredient here that will go into our mix here as soon as that gets heated up. And we also have our pie crust. The next thing that we're going to work on is the meringue. So that's also going to just take a minute. So I already have the egg whites in here. So your egg whites, you're going to have 3 egg whites, and we're just going to turn the mixer on here and just beat those until they're a little bit foamy. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add in half a teaspoon cream of tartar, 3 tablespoons of sugar, and a teaspoon of vanilla, as well as just a little pinch of salt, which I've already all put together here. So we're going to turn our mixer on here. Looks pretty foamy to me, so we're going to add in our other little ingredients here. Oops. Need to grab another spoon. And we're just gonna have to turn this on. Just beat it until it's extremely fluffy with lots of little stiff peaks in it, which I'll show before we finish as well. And I'm gonna check on our peanut butter pie filling. Looking really good. So once this is a little bit warmed up, then we're just gonna add in our peanut butter and powdered sugar mix. Sort of while we're waiting for our meringue to kind of set up, as I said before, Rosalind really wasn't too interested in fashion. Not only did she wear her inaugural dress, of course, twice, but again, when he was, elected president after governor, but she actually once attended Mark Twain Tonight, which was a program at the Kennedy Center, wearing the same beige jumper and navy blouse that she'd been wearing all day. So she was just a very simple and very down-to-earth individual, and still is to this day, of course. And in fact, Jimmy has been said to shop for some of his clothes at Dollar General even. So the Carters also still live in the same ranch-style homes that they built back in 1961, and of course their hometown, Plains, Georgia. Coming along. So while we wait, in our mix here, going to add in our powdered sugar and peanut butter. As well as 2 tablespoons of butter and a teaspoon, excuse me, of vanilla. And once that's all mixed together, we have our filling. sadly, for whatever reason, my meringue is not setting up too well. I do have a finished product to show you. I'll continue letting it run. We'll see what happens. I am not a chef, but I do enjoy cooking through the First Ladies and learning about them. So we do have our really nice peanut butter filling, which actually works out to be almost perfect because I will show you the finished product. And for whatever reason, sometimes meringue doesn't set up correctly. I'm sure people that know a little bit more about cooking specifically would be able to answer that question for you. But here we have our lovely peanut butter pie filling. So you'll just put your meringue on top, and then you'll bake it on 400 for about 10 minutes, just until the top is browned. And you'll have a lovely peanut butter pie, which again, if you would like to, you can top this to go along with your cocktail with Reese cups or Reese Pieces or something like that. So the last thing that we're gonna make today is Rosalyn's Plains Georgia cheese ring, as they call it. And this one is by far the easiest recipe. So even myself, who again, not totally a chef, can totally make, and it's really good. So all you have to do for this recipe is you're gonna take a cup of mayonnaise, a cup of sharp cheddar cheese, shredded. You can either shred your own or buy it. And then you're also gonna take a cup of chopped pecans, a cup of chopped onions, a little bit of a dash of cayenne, and as she has it in her recipe, 6 turns of black pepper. So we're just gonna mix all of this together. I like to mix my pecans in a little bit first. And then you're gonna want a mold, a cheese mold or any type of mold, especially one that would have, in a way that you could put a circular section in the middle of it. So what I did with my cheese ring, when I made it, is I actually just took a small dish about like this and just pressed it down into the side, because I found that my bundt pan, which, you know, of course was a little bit bigger, just it was too much. So anyway, just mix all together. It's so simple. And it is a little spicy. So although this one doesn't have peanuts, the onion as well as the pepper and cayenne, of course, give it a little bit of a kick. So just beware if you are going to serve this, if people around you don't like a lot of spice. And basically you're just going to mix this all together, just like that. And then you are going to have to refrigerate this for at least 3 hours. So again, I do have a finished product that I will show you, but it is just as simple as that. And then, like I said, if you want to, you can take a little dish like this, pop her down in the middle if you don't have a bundt pan that's a little smaller, etc. But you can also make a larger cheese ring if you want. So you'll refrigerate this for up to 3 hours before you can serve it. And what you will get is a lovely cheese ring here. And what is unique about her recipe is you actually put strawberry preserves in the center. Now the last little part here is part of her recipe is you surround this with Ritz crackers specifically, and you have a really super easy cheese ring appetizer to serve at your next get together, and you can talk about Rosalind Carter possibly. Also, another very random thing that I've learned recently about Rosalyn And it's not necessarily about her, it's just kind of an interesting little tidbit. So she was once pictured with a serial killer. John Wayne Gacy was pictured with her in May of 1978, of course, prior to when he was arrested later that year in December. The photo, which I printed off, excuse the noise, I printed it off, but it might be kind of hard. You can look it up if you're interested. Here they are. And it shows Mr. Gacy wearing a big S on his lapel, indicating that he'd been given security clearance, which became, after his arrest, of course, a huge embarrassment for the Secret Service. And in fact, the original photo was signed to John Gacy, best wishes, Rosalind Carter. I could not believe that. When I read it, of course, she didn't know at the time and nobody did. But so here we have a few of Rosalyn's recipes. The Carters are humanitarians through and through and continue to be trusted all over the world. So it kind of does bring us to the end of our live program. Again, I'll be sticking around to answer some questions, and I would love to hear some thoughts if you have any. So just thank y'all so much for joining this evening, and I hope you thought it was, as they would say, on good times. Dynamite, and we'll tune in to the next live program or any of the other live programs that the National First Ladies Library offers. So if you want to follow along for more, you can, again, not only check out the NFLL social media and YouTube, but you can also follow me on Instagram at Cooking with the First Ladies. And we'll just end this with a final Rosalind Carter quote. Which she said, a leader takes people where they want to go, but a great leader takes people where they don't necessarily want to go, but ought to be. So other than that, any questions? And I'll see y'all on the flip side. So thanks again.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was really wonderful. We had some technical cooking questions from the audience, and we have some cool First Lady questions as well. So, as far as peanut butter goes, what kind of peanut butter would you recommend to use in the recipe? Do you have a preferred type? Is natural peanut butter okay? What would the Carters go to?
Well, I honestly, I wish I did know what the Carters would. I wonder what their opinion is on that. Maybe we should try. If anybody knows them, let's reach out. Let's see what their favorite peanut butter is. Actually, they probably wouldn't want to eat peanut butter, but honestly, in these particular recipes, I just use regular creamy peanut butter. But oftentimes for especially like our own family purposes, we use kind of the organic brands, more natural brands. But really for any of these recipes, you can use any peanut butter. As long as it's creamy, you can't use the chunky.
And to clarify with the cheese, just so we can get the recipe updated, and for anyone who got the recipe that didn't include the cheese, can you tell us what kind of cheese and how much we should be using, just so we can get that down?
Okay, it's just, and I actually said cup out loud. It's 1 pound of shredded sharp cheddar cheese.
Got it.
Great. 1
Great.
pound. I keep saying cup, and it's not cup. So it's 1 pound sharp cheddar cheese. You can buy it shredded in the bag, or of course you can buy a block, or and shred it yourself.
Our director, Jenny Highfield, is telling me that she, in conversation with Chef Mesnier, said that the cheese was something that he hated serving and he would hide it in the freezer. So in thinking about that, I wanted to ask you the question about state dinners and what a Carter state dinner would have been like. I kept thinking of not quite a state dinner, but when Eleanor Roosevelt welcomed the Queen, she wanted to serve and did end up serving hot dogs, and the sense of a more casual White House. What was the fare for an event like that that might be a little bit more fancy?
That's a great question. And I didn't read too much into the state dinners. But I do know, and funny that she had said that about the cheese ring, because there was other things and it was sort of like that because they were just kind of more simple eaters, like more simple foods. And it was kind of a big deal, with their Southern culture in the White House, which was, going back to their grits, that they like the grits and things like that, and calling it the grits factor because it really just kind of thrust the Southern culture into the White House, which was a little bit different than really what had kind of almost ever really been seen in the White House before in that way. So although I can't give any details off the top of my head about state dinners with the Carters, I do know and had read that there were several instances where some of the White House chefs were not too thrilled at the requests or family recipes, etc.
I was reading that Amy made a big splash at some of the state dinners as well. That she was very impressive,
I
and
think
well as the cat, maybe.
I think too, and I hope I'm not wrong, and I'm pretty sure it's Amy, but I think there was, it might not have been a state dinner, but I think it was like a state dinner or something very important. And that she was reading, I believe, maybe like, yes, it was her, I think. She was reading Willy Wonka and not the Chocolate Factory, but the sequel, The Great Glass Elevator. And someone that she was sitting around who was not her parents, another politician of some kind, uh, said to her, something like, you need to eat your broccoli or something, but all she wanted to do was read this book. And it was ironic that she was, in my opinion, reading uh, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or, Great Glass Elevator, because she actually signed her name in the White House elevator. I think with a permanent marker, maybe. I don't know.
Very cool. It looks like we have a question from Facebook, and hopefully I'm translating this correctly. How would you describe pie? Would you would you pre-bake that pie crust, I guess? Is what we're
I would just, my pie crust, I just bought it. It was just pre-made pie crust. So I would suggest just whatever that instruction is on the prepackaged pie crust.
Mhm.
I did not pre-bake this one because when I read those instructions on it, it was just like if it's a filled pie crust, But I did set it out for, I think the recommendation was about 20 minutes to kind of thaw, and I put fork marks in the bottom of it. Filled it, put the meringue on top, which I apologize once again, my meringue did not set up this time. But yeah, I wouldn't pre-bake it necessarily for this particular recipe.
There's a lot of sympathetic comments about the meringues. Someone says meringues are panic sensitive and always try to show you up when you're counting on them. It looks just fine, and you're super brave to try meringues. So I would not worry about that.
Well,
You
thank
are
you
very
to all of the sympathetic folk out there and understanding, because again, I'm a history person and not a chef, but I try, and I think it's fun and it's a cool way to learn about people and the first ladies and stuff. So thanks to whoever is saying they're sympathetic, because it is difficult. It's not the first time I've had meringue not set up.
So just some First Lady history facts or questions as far as Rosalind goes, thinking about all of the humanitarian work that she's done, her advocacy to mental health. What kind of influence do you think that she's had on First Ladies who have come after her?
I think she's had a huge impact on it because just like with her and Betty Ford, they were sort of in this time where um, they were both kind of fighting against sort of their role as First Lady. And I think both of them kind of were trying to move into, uh, having more of an influence, being able to have a say, being able to have, sort of um, campaigns or things that they were interested in and that they would be able to talk about or try to be a part of. Especially so much with Rosalind because she was really the first lady to actually have a campaign promise while Jimmy was along the trail, and that was adopting the mental health awareness campaign. So I really think, especially those two first ladies, were kind of pushing it into more of a what we think of as first ladies who are almost just as recognized in their political work or their causes or things that they care about, rather than prior where it was so much more of a focus on what are these ladies wearing, what parties are they going to, that sort of thing. What are they serving, what are they doing with their kids, that sort of thing. So I really do think that that has really made an impact on the role of the first lady, in my opinion. But like I said,
So,
as well as Betty Ford, she was, of course, Betty was just so outspoken, but in so many positive ways, bringing, different things to light that really hadn't been talked about all that much. Um, so yeah, I think it really did push it kind of into the more modern era of first ladies as we know them today.
there's one question about the cornbread. Any idea on what Rosalind would have suggested to put on the cornbread? Butter, jelly, anything in particular?
Butter, serve warm with butter. Yep.
Okay. And
And
then
make some red beans and rice for the side too to go
got
along
it.
with that, and you'll have one of their favorite meals.
And forgive me if you already mentioned this with the cocktails. Were they pretty avid drinkers at all
No,
or no?
no,
Okay.
no. They were not really hardly at all, if at
Mhm.
all. They were very much not drinkers. Which is funny because my previous live program with Grace Coolidge, I made a Rob Roy because she had ironically named her dog Rob Roy, and it was during Prohibition, just kind of as a dig at the whole situation. So it was kind of fun to include a cocktail with that one. So I found the peanut butter cocktail. I thought it would be fun, but yeah, I don't think that Jimmy or Rosalind would ever be around, sitting around drinking peanut butter cocktails, or probably really hardly any cocktails at all, from what I've read.
And is there a soundtrack you would recommend for any sort of dinner party where you served these Carter friendly dishes?
Yeah, totally. Which is great because a part of my life program I did mention, of course, the Allman Brothers, Bob Dylan. So I definitely include Allman Brothers. Let's go with some Midnight Rider. Bob Dylan. Any of his songs would kind of fit in. Jimmy Carter was a pretty big Bob Dylan fan. They're still friends. Any Willie Nelson songs, you could, especially with regards to the Carters, they did love the song Amazing Grace. So that's why one of the songs that they sang with Willie. As well as if anybody is interested in 1970s music, I would check out Delaney Bramlett and Bonnie Bramlett, who were actually really good friends with my dad. Any of their music is great. So that would be my main playlist to say for the Carters. As well as you could even go as far as to include some 1970s movie soundtracks. Star Wars was huge. A Star is Born, starring Barbara Streisand, was huge. She was pretty popular as well in the 1970s. Olivia Newton-John, you could put some physical in there. So those would be some fun ones to look into to make a playlist.
And there's a question from Facebook. How did your family like eating these when you were testing out the recipes?
That is a great question. Well, nobody's tried this yet. That's my first time making that. But in regards to these, um, they do like my cornbread just a little bit better. And that is solely because I do it just a little bit differently and I use buttermilk instead in mine. Um, my husband loves the cheese ring. I mean, I think it's amazing too. It's so simple, but it's really good. And nobody can resist the peanut butter pie. In fact, I will be trying to attempt to make some meringue for the second pie, but I already have even neighbors asking when they're going to get some of the pie. So
Well,
these were all very good recipes.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was so super fun. I really loved it. And I hope that you have someone there to help you wash the dishes and you're going to sit back and put on an Allman Brothers record and sip your peanut cocktail tonight because you did a wonderful job. And to anyone who had issues connecting earlier in the program, we will be sending out the link tomorrow as well as the updated recipe sheet. So thank you so much, everyone, and we hope to see you again soon. Bon appetit.
Awesome. Thanks you all so much. Have a
Thank
great evening.
you.
Bye.